Honey, I blew up the business.
Welcome to the podcast, Mike Lander. Good to see you, mate.
Hey, how are you, Dan?
I'm great. I'm really great. I'm very excited for this because Mike's got one of those annoyingly sort of impressive CVs.
Thank you, Dan. It's very kind.
It's funny. It's a bit humbling, this job, because I keep on getting like accomplished people on it, and I have to spend like the first few minutes reading out your amazing CV, which simultaneously embarrasses you and makes me feel like, you know, some sort of failure. So yeah. but Mike is a bit of a ledge when it comes to particularly the commercial world.
You're very kind, mate. You're very kind.
And particularly in and around London. I'm going to describe him, because he probably wouldn't describe himself, as a swashbuckling negotiation guru.
Oh, my word.
I'm buzzing today, mate. I've had 2 coffees and I've been thinking of words. And he's negotiated literally hundreds of deals worth over 400 million in aggregate. And he's done, not only that, he's bootstrapped businesses that he's sold for 7 figures, and he's made people more than £1 million profit through more effective procurement. So he knows how to make money. He actually's got a background as a banking executive and a big level business consultant for KPMG, but he took that into the world of entrepreneurship. He's currently CEO of Piscari, which helps smaller companies negotiate better deals with big companies. But he's had a long-standing entrepreneurial career, and also a career as a non-exec director chairman, but focused on growth, particularly around marketing, industry, recruitment, professional services, IT, education. He's also co-founder of an interior design business with his wife.
Yep.
And co-hosts, he's a big producer of amazing content. So he co-hosts It's a Good Start podcast, where he shares experiences about entrepreneurship and agency life for digital agencies and creative agencies and consultancies. But he's a prolific blog post writer, video creator, and educator, I would argue. He's very good at sort of sharing his wisdom. And he writes a column for The Drum. And if you don't know The Drum, it's Europe's biggest marketing magazine?
Yeah, it's a massive media publishing platform, in Europe and now North America.
Is it really? Yeah, well, it's a great... so check him out on the internet. Well, we'll give you the links and what have you in due course. As we were sort of looking at your CV, and we actually did speak about this briefly yesterday. We had a little chat yesterday. But I was trying to think how to describe your career, and I came up with a phrase which you may not like, but I'm going to call you the growth whisperer. You seem to have this knack of going into companies and helping them grow.
Yeah, so, I think that's Although I'm not sure I'd describe myself in those words, Dan, but that's very kind. But yeah, that is what I do. Yeah, I'm all about I think because I've run businesses, owned businesses, used my own money to grow businesses. I know what it feels like to be there and going, I want to grow. We've got some problems. They need fixing. And when I go into organizations and work with them, it's about the outcome and the benefit. It has to deliver benefits. Got to.
And I think particularly at the moment, as we're all kind of rough and tumbling through or out of lockdown or coming out of lockdown, and things like making money and making profit, and the outcome of the damn process of being an entrepreneur or running a business is it's more critical than ever, I would
Absolutely.
argue. So I'm super excited to have you on the podcast, because I know there's going to be loads of really practical stuff, but for me, that's why I'm doing it. So I can help myself, and hopefully you, our lovely listeners, will get benefit too. But I'm going to start going back in time to the mid-noughties, 2006, where you've been somewhat into your entrepreneurial career, but you had a bit of a revelation around that time.
Yeah.
Where you realized that whilst you had been self-employed, you weren't actually running a business. You were basically just being a freelancer.
Correct.
And then you had this, what you've called a, quote, crazy idea. Could you explain what your crazy idea was and what happened?
Yeah, I can. So first of all, just before I explain the crazy idea, I've got this thing about, these aren't good or bad, they just are. When people leave corporate world, if you've been in the corporate world and you go, right, okay, I'm going to go off and do my own thing, there's one of 2 things in your mind. I'm either going to build a business or I'm going to be a freelancer. The problem is sometimes people get confused. They leave the corporate world and they say, I'm going to build a business, but they act as a freelancer. Neither's bad and neither's brilliant. But they are different. Because with one, you're trying to maximize your income each month, each year. And with one, you're building a business where you earn bugger all over a period of like 3, 5, 10 years in the hope that one day it will become something bigger and more valuable. And they're just different. And so this crazy idea was, I'd been working as a kind of freelancer. It had gone really well. I'd earned good money. I'd enjoyed it. I'd left the kind of KPMG days behind back in 2000. Loved it, but went off and did this freelancing thing. Thought I was building a business, but I wasn't. I was being a freelancer. And then it's not that I woke up one day, but it pretty much was kind of one day. I was working for this organization as a freelancer for them, and they were about 50 odd consultants, good size, brilliant consultancy led by 2 really talented guys. And I was having lunch with one of them, one of the founders, over a curry in the West End. And we were just talking away. And he said, no, we're looking at potentially selling the business, blah, blah, blah. So that's interesting, and he said, just like talk to a few people that might be interested. And I said, what about if I buy it? And he kind of choked on his curry and his beer and said, yeah, Mike, you work for us as a freelancer. You can't buy the business. I'm like, but if I agreed a number with you and I got the money together, would you sell it to me? And he said, I don't know. But I talked to my business partner. And he talked to his business partner. And I was kind of on the list of potential buyers. The backstory to why I did that was I realized something which was fairly fundamental, which is starting a business, as you and me both know, there are very, very few businesses that make it past the first couple of years. Those that make it past the first couple of years, a very small percentage gets to like 1 million of turnover, which is really hard. And it's often, it's not to do with your skill or experience or capability, or it's often to do with timing. And that's been well proven through the research. The kind of proposition that you've got at that time, if the market's ready for it, loads of factors. And so what I realized was, as I was thinking about building businesses rather than being a freelancer, it occurred to me, I said, well, why don't I buy something that works really well, a great business with a great brand, and build it up? And that way I'm buying something that already exists. So I'm leapfrogging that stage of 0 to 1 million. And then I can take it from, 5, 10 million up to 20 million. Maybe that's a better way of going. And that's when I said to this guy, maybe I could buy your business. And that was the crazy idea, it was that in a moment when, well, rather than, why don't I shortcut the 0 to 1, which is the really, really, really hard yards, and get to something that's already at scale that I can then double. And in the end, we did a deal, remarkably. But that was back in the day when you could actually raise money. But that was a crazy idea. I'll just buy the business that I work for.
So you 2006, this is pre-financial crash.
Correct. So the crash was 2008-ish, 7, 8, 8, 9. This was like no one knew the crash was coming. The banks were starting to act a bit like VCs then, because they were starting to deploy capital into entrepreneurs that was debt financing, but had more risk attached to it than their usual asset-backed debt lending. So it's a really interesting time to be in the market. That timing thing, Dan, we've talked about this before. 2006 was a great time to be an entrepreneur, growing businesses and raising money, because you could. Because banks wanted to deploy this money into these entrepreneurs that were growing like Topsy, and they wanted to take part in the action. No one knew what was around the corner kind of a couple of years later.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, just having, again, coming out of lockdown, no one knew what was coming around the corner back in late 2009 or early 2020. And this is, again, a theme we've had on a couple of our guests, which is both timing / luck.
Yep.
And then unexpected stuff dropping on your desk.
Correct.
Yeah. And I think there's those couple of things. I think it's almost solace, actually, because I've been building businesses, and it is a slog getting up to a million. And it is about this kind of the luck of the draw, of timing, etc. But here's I'm interested in is, so you're sat there like this dude on an hourly rate without being
correct. Yeah? Exactly it.
In a curry house in the West End of London, and you were possessed by a thought, which was, I'm going to buy your business, mate. Right. And I guess you just said that he didn't take that seriously.
No, because why would you?
Well, and my question is, why did you take it seriously?
So this comes back to, again, something that you and me have like kind of chatted over before, about the confidence thing. There's a weird thing that happens, I think, to us as entrepreneurs, which is, I think a lot of us spend, and I've definitely been there, where you spend years in kind of self-doubt. You build up this expertise and you become known at being good or great at doing something, but you always doubt yourself. You doubt that you can get up tomorrow morning and do it again. You know, you've just brought back a memory, Dan, which I'll tell to the audience because it's kind of funny horror story. I was working for KPMG back in 96, 2000. Brilliant experience, amazing as a management consultant. Worked with some really talented partners and worked with some amazing clients. But there was one fateful program I ran, which was I was running it out of Europe for a big credit card organization. And we were running a strategy program for this big organization. And it got to the kind of the crunch day of this big strategy presentation. I had a team working for me. We'd been at it for like 6 months, lots of reviews along the way. And I had a team of about 20 consultants working with me, big old team. And the board of this credit card company was like 20 bankers. These were the kind of MDs of big banks all around Europe. So these were people who were running huge, huge budgets. And it got to the day of the presentation. I had my team ready. We're all outside the door. We're all waiting. And we're about to walk in. And the chairman walks out and says to me, Mike, because this is so confidential and so sensitive, we've decided that none of you team members can come in. You're going to present the entire story. And I said to the chairman, I said, okay, you're the client. I said, so let's make it a 20-minute update with a discussion. He went, no, you've got 3 hours. Crack on.
3 hours.
So I've got 3 hours in a room with about 300 slides on the wall for me to tell the story that my team have built. And it was absolutely terrifying. I remember standing there in front of this audience. This is the can I get up tomorrow morning and do it again? And thinking, I'm going to get slaughtered here. I'm going to get absolutely taken apart. And sure enough, I got taken apart in quite a few moments of that presentation because I didn't have all the detail on the content. And it was a really interesting lesson in life about being hijacked by a client. And I didn't have the confidence then to say to the guy, I'm not doing it. We spent 6 months on this. We've gone through all the updates. The team deserve the right to present what they've done and present their work and to shine. So I'm not going to do it. And if that means you want to fire me, then you need to fire me. But I didn't have the confidence then to say that. I let myself get hijacked. And my partner at the time, who was there, KPMG partner afterwards, he said, what happened? And I went berserk. And he said, Mike, think again. Whose fault is this? And then I went, it was mine. That was my fault. I made the mistake. No one else did. I accepted someone else's agenda. And as an entrepreneur, I think the reason I tell that little story is that's really important is you've got to own your own agenda. You've got to have the confidence in yourself. Despite the fact that everyone's telling you counter, you need sometimes to back your own judgment and go, I am going to do this. It may go wrong, but I believe this is the right thing to do.
Yeah, so the courage of your own convictions somewhat. And also perhaps you mentioned it's the right thing to do for the team and for the situation and for the client and for the wider good. So there's almost a kind of a moral or ethical stand.
There definitely is. There absolutely definitely is. And that's really hard because on the one hand, you've got the commercial benefit of the future for you as an organization, as a provider, versus the greater good of the team and the right moral thing to do. And sometimes those are in conflict. And I've had that. And you've just got to make a choice. And I'm not blaming anyone for taking the revenue path, the getting £1 million deal path, but it has consequences.
It's funny, we were talking about this yesterday in my business because opportunities come up, and when you're feeling lacking in confidence, let's call around sales or sales pipeline or future cash flow, or actually current cash flow often is when it's make bad decisions because you feel short term is a problem.
You do.
Opportunities come in which aren't right, but like you say, there's a number. So you make a decision which is, well, if we do this, we get the number, and that'll help our short-term cash flow problem.
Correct.
Or help me my nervous state today because something's dropped out of the pipeline. And then the cost of that is you're not really wanting to work with them. It's a pain in the bum. It takes you 6 months longer. They don't pay you. And they're always they're always the opportunities that have the sting in the tail.
I always say to all of my clients when we're having just discussions about sales pipelines, the best, any negotiation course you go on, any negotiation stuff you type into Google, this term BATNA will come up, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. The best BATNA, the best alternative to a negotiated agreement with a client is a really strong pipeline. Because then you get to choose. Where we get into trouble as entrepreneurs is when our pipeline is weak. We're forced to make decisions we don't want to make because we've got to make payroll.
Yeah.
And the best way to solve that is, in the long term, have a sustainable pipeline. And that then gives you lots of choice. It's a really important lesson in life.
Yeah, do you know, I say that really is. And I can 100% say that is right. And because I'm living that right now, it's a project I'm working on right now, is how do we boost our sales pipeline so we have a stronger negotiating position. And really, it's funny, you say the word negotiation, you say all these kind of buzz pipeline, whatever. What it means is you don't end up making dumb decisions to make a quick buck.
Correct.
This is fantastic. And I do want to get into this in a bit more depth. But what I do want to do is just go back and you touched on confidence there.
Yep.
You're in this curry house having your lunch and you suddenly have a burst of confidence.
Yep.
And maybe misplaced without any justification, but you did it. And then you went off and kind of, and you did the deal, found the money.
Yeah.
Now I want to come back to the theme of confidence because I want to actually first. I saw you in an interview. You talked about in that moment how you went to your network. Could you just inform? So you didn't know what you were doing. You didn't have any credibility. You didn't have any justification for your confidence, perhaps. But you said it, and you went off and did it. So how did you approach that, and how did your network get involved?
So the network's really important, Dan, in my world, is that I've spent many, many years building my kind of professional business network. And it's funny, my wife said to me, kind of a couple of years ago, she said, you spend all this time building your network, but does it ever deliver any commercial success? It's a very genuine question. And it was interesting. I said, well, my view of the world is that if I do the right thing, so I help others, eventually I believe in karma. Good things happen. And it might come from all sorts of different perspectives, not commercial success, but people saying good things about you. So on that point, what I like about these conversations, Dan, is they're like little rabbit warrens. You hit something and you go off down a little trail. So your job is to bring me back at some point, obviously.
That's fine. Keep going, get down the rabbit hole. That's good.
You never know in life. This connected world. We just talked about Ian Hamilton. Happens that you know him really well, really, really well. I know Pete Bowker, who works with Ian. That connection, I didn't know we had. And that's important because as you go through your business career, if you start with, I want to help people and I want to do the right thing, and you believe in karma, what will happen is when someone else that you're thinking of doing some work with meets one of your network, they'll probably say nice things about you and how good you are to work with and what your skills are. You'll never know that conversation's happened, but it's really important that it happens in a positive way. And that's why you have to invest in your network for the long-term success, because you'll get referenced without ever being asked to be referenced, because people will know of you and they'll ask about you and they'll just take a soft reference on you. And that's why when Vicky said, do you get any commercial success? I'm like, well, I can't correlate and pin the dots together and give you a line. But what I do know is I try and help others. I try and do the right thing. I'm generous with my time. I make less money than other people do. But I do know that I've got a very trusting network and a well-connected network. And that happens time and time again. People say to me, I've won I did an analysis of my pipeline recently. 95% of my deals had come through my network effectively in the last 12 months. It was remarkable.
It's funny, we did that a few years ago after a large new business campaign in which we invested a lot of money on sales agency, marketing activity, events, etc. Similar statistic, I think it was 90 odd %.
Yeah,
came from referrals and word of mouth.
Yeah,
in the following year, and it's just like, oh, okay, so you know, it's very easy to. Oh, well, let's invest in sales and marketing or new business development. And you spend money on people or activity. But actually, this sort of day-to-day interrelationship thing, that, I mean, again, as you have said, for you and in my experience, for me, has been the source of all the money.
That's right. I mean, look at, so my, the guy, Kevin, that I do the It's a Good Start podcast with. Kevin's been in SEO for, well, since almost the start of SEO, probably like 20 odd years or more. And so he's built an amazing network of heads of SEO across all sorts of brands in all sorts of areas around the world. And of course, because of that, and we've won lots of awards as Resignal, they've won lots of awards, which is amazing. You build this network of credibility and success and referrals, and people start to come and talk to you about business. And that's just, it's a long-term investment. I interviewed a brilliant guy the other week called Dr. Ivan Meisner. And Dr. Ivan Meisner built a company called BNI. And BNI, for those that don't know it in the audience, is it's a networking group, but it's a global networking group, like 100,000 members plus now. And back in the day, it was, and this isn't underselling it at all, the opposite. It was if you were a decorator and you're an electrician, you'd join a BNI chapter, you'd meet every week at 7 a.m. to discuss what you're doing, and you'd refer leads to each other. Because if someone's using a decorator, they might need an electrician. And it's a referral network, but it's a very well organized, well structured referral network. And I interviewed Dr. Meisner, who started it, and it's now huge. And one of the things he said, look, you know, you've got to invest in the long term in your network. You know, it's not a quick shot in the arm. Imagine I just met you at a networking event, and I'm walking around and I bump into you. So I'm like, oh, hello, who are you? And you go, oh, I'm Dan. I go, Dan, nice to meet you. What do you do? And you go, oh, you know, we help companies solve their technology problems. I say, great, brilliant. So I don't need that right now, but I might be able to sell you some marketing work. Here's my card. Give me a ring tomorrow. We'll set up a meeting. What's your likely reaction? What would you say to me?
You'd say, yes, brilliant. I definitely will do that. And then I would put your card in the
bin.
File. Yeah, in the round file under the desk. Yeah, exactly.
And that's not networking. People think that's networking. It's not. That's just nonsense. You start to relate. You start to find. I'd start up by going, "Who are you? And what's your backstory? What are you interested in?" Like music. We've got a common connection over music, mate. You know, we love music, and that's a great way of starting to build empathy with each other.
Yeah, it's funny. A cliche. It is a cliche, but people buy from people.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't buy from a brand or a service proposition or a sales. You buy from people that you trust and believe in.
Correct.
And you like, actually. And fundamentally, there's a bit here where, I mean, again, if you read Cialdini's book about persuasion.
Brilliant. Amazing book.
Liking is one of the, I think it's 7 principles of persuasion he has.
Yeah, it's critical. And it links to confidence, Dan. You talk about confidence again. Bring it back practically to that confidence thing. Is, you know, confidence is also built upon the fact that we like each other and we start to trust each other. I want to come back to trust in a second as well, about how you build trust. I've got a very practical framework of how you build trust, which I was taught. One thing that boosts our self-confidence is the reflection from the other person that we like each other. Because you start to then open up. You start to become real. You start to become the person that you are. You stop putting on the act and the script, and you get into who you are and what you do and, you know, what you're passionate about. And that, I think, is very important.
Yeah, just one sort of point on that. The thing I've learned, particularly the last few years, is the quicker you, as in when you were in that networking situation, shed your professional layer, shed your sales pitch, shed everything, and just be you.
Yeah.
The better your relationships get, and therefore the better your business gets.
Yeah, no, absolutely, definitely, completely agree.
So on confidence, we've talked about the power of your network, and it was your network which helps you put together that deal at the time. But we're picking on the thread of confidence, because time out on our conversations. Take a step back. People listening to you now, listening to me, perhaps will go, wow, look at these guys, super confident, and they really understand their brief, and they're totally bulletproof at all times. Right? Can you share with the audience your background? You've been very open in previous podcasts and on interviews about your shyness.
Yes.
Perhaps lack of confidence. So can you just talk about that and perhaps give us an insight to how you built confidence?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Dan. So I was adopted as a kid. I was adopted at 6 months old. And I'll never know if that has an impact on my confidence or not, but it's certainly a factor that's in your life. Very fortunate, adopted by very kind, loving parents. But at the age of 16, I lacked confidence massively, like really shy, really shy kid at 16, and didn't perform in my academics at all. So back in the day when we did O levels, I got 4 O's just about straight through, 1 CSE, and I left school at 16. So I didn't enjoy school. In fact, I hated school. So I left school at 16 and wanted to go off and do a job. And I went for interviews as an apprentice back in the Northwest. So I was brought up in Stockport, as you know, in the Northwest of England. Went round and I got interviews with about, half a dozen engineering firms. And one engineering firm in particular, I won't mention the name of the company, but the training manager that interviewed me, I'm a 16-year-old shy kid. He's the training manager. And through the interview, he basically said, you don't seem very bright. You don't seem very capable. We can't give you an apprenticeship. We might get you to sweep the floor, but we don't think you'll make much of yourself. Now imagine how that feels to a kid at 16 who lacks confidence. How crushing that could be.
Well, I mean, it's like a litany of like the worst thing you could say to somebody at that point in their lives.
Exactly. Now something weird happened. And this might be part of the how did I become confident. I made a choice. I said to myself, I can either accept this as just the way it is, or I can prove them wrong and me right. And I am better than this, and I will do something with my life. And that triggered a set of discussions with a really good friend of the family, a guy called Eric Dearman, who sadly passed away now many years ago. But he was a lecturer at the local tech. And Eric Dearman kind of like talked to me, and he was a lecturer at the tech, and he went to go and talk to Ferranti. And he opened a position for me. He made Ferranti open a new apprenticeship role because Ferranti were a big provider of apprentices to the college. And I got a role in the QA department as an apprentice, which didn't exist. And I got this job and I was absolutely over the moon. And over the next 4 years, back in the day then as an apprentice, you used to do day release. So I used to do 1 day at college, 9 till 9. And then I did 4 days in work. And I loved the work. It really suited me. I really enjoyed the work. I learned how to be an engineer, to build circuits. I learned the theory at college and applied it in work. And I got a phone call one day from college, about 2 years into the program. And they said, you've won Student of the Year award. And I said to them, I think you've made a mistake because I'm not academic. So it can't be me. It must be someone else. They're like, no, it's definitely you. We've got your marks. You were Student of the Year. And it was one of those kind of moments where you get this third party confirmation that actually you are good at what you do. And because I loved it and I enjoyed the engineering studies and I enjoyed the work, it wasn't a chore. It was fun. And if you do something that's fun, you've got a much higher chance of success than something that's a drudge. And that again boosted my confidence, is that it broke the myth of you are a crap academic. It said, no, if you find things that you like learning about, you're a good academic. Just find the things that you like learning about.
Yeah, and it's almost the word academic is the theory and the practice.
Yeah, correct.
Right? So what you've described is the sort of there was a narrative imposed on you by this bloke saying, You're
useless.
You're useless. And then what you did, and I guess this is what I think is an interesting lesson here, is it's building confidence by the experience of doing.
Correct. I'm an experiential learner, Dan. If you look at my profile, and it was I did an MBA many years ago at Cranfield, which was amazing, and for all sorts of reasons, like really amazing. And when they profile all the students, and my profile came back as an experiential learner. And what that means, basically, to anyone in the audience is, I'll set up experiments. I'll go, okay, I've got this problem, need to solve it. I wonder if I can solve it. So I'll build an experiment, and I'll go out and I'll try it. I've got this thing called do a little, learn a lot. And I've always had it, and it's always served me well. Do a little, learn a lot. So I run little experiments that, don't cost a lot of money. You try them out, so you don't burn all of your capital. You run an experiment, you try it out, and you go, did it work? Great, I'll do more of it. Did it work? No. Okay, I'll stop doing that. You don't punish yourself for spending £1,000 on something that didn't work. You learn from it and you move on. You just don't spend another 1,000.
Exactly that, and it's the learning from it. And again, it's this what you've said is a very practical articulation of what's got popular in books like The Lean Startup,
right,
and things like that. Which it gets lost in a lot of jargon, a lot of that kind of stuff. But your idea of running experiments, and again, just a thought that springs to mind is that Jeff Bezos, attributes the reason for Amazon's success is the volume of experiments that they run.
Interesting.
Yeah. But because it's a numbers game, because most and again, by the word experiment again can be a bit misleading. Like you have to be really scientific and whatever.
Yeah, bloke in a white jacket, and you
have to give something a go.
Yeah, correct.
That's an experiment. You have a again this sort of Richard Feynman, the guy, the Nobel physicist, said his definition of the scientific method was that, quotes, first we guess it. That's the start of the scientific method. So it's a guess. It's a punt. You don't know. It is.
I mean, they call it in theory a hypothesis. It's a guess. It's just a guess.
Yeah. So what's beautiful about that is, again, the language is quite important here, because you call it a hypothesis. You think it's really complicated and expensive.
Exactly.
You call it a guess. Well, yeah, it's like every single strategy is a guess.
Is a guess.
Right?
And then what you do is collect evidence to see if the guess was right.
Yeah, what he says in this, there's a really great, if you Google it, a 1 minute description of him in the 50s or 60s describing the scientific method to a class. He says, first we guess it, and then he gets some data from the real life. And he goes, it doesn't matter how beautiful your guess is. If it's wrong, it's wrong.
Correct.
Right? So again, I think this is quite important for entrepreneurs.
Don't spend time crafting the guess. Don't do it.
And again, if it's like, this is the thing, as an entrepreneur, you can quite easily fall in love with your guess.
You can.
Yeah. And then your ego gets in the way, because your ego gets associated with the guess. Like, so this is my idea for let's call it a sales campaign. And it's my idea, therefore it's definitely right.
Exactly.
But then all reality then comes back at you and it's not really working, but you just forge ahead.
Reality bites you in the bum. It's really important that you feel the pain of that, actually. Is that if something keeps biting you in the bum, there's something probably wrong with the guess. Or just go back and adapt it and go, all right, well, let's try something different. I mean, I've done it recently. I mean, interesting with it, because, now, so I work with sales teams, helping them improve their negotiation skills through training and coaching, and constructing interesting commercial deals to basically get them bigger deal values, to help them convert more deals and to make more money. I've been looking at all the different things that I do and my service proposition, and, I've got an MBA and I've got frameworks and boxes and God knows what. But I'm always looking at my client data and going, what did they buy and what did they get benefit from? What was the value? So they bought something and they got some benefit from it. And when I look at all the stuff I've done, there's a range. No one's got bad value, but some have got a lot more tangible value than others. And then you go, well, what was that? And you look at that and go, oh, I did that and that. Well, why don't I package that thing and try and sell it to other people? Because maybe they'll get the same benefit from it that this one did. And lo and behold, they do. And you go, oh, there's something here. This little guess that I've had, and I've collected some data, seems to be working. Well, I'll put a bit more effort into that. And that's what I do every day. I am definitely not the cleverest bloke in the room, Dan. Definitely not. But I am. You talk about luck. So I've got a definition of luck. My definition, I'll probably get all the words wrong, but broadly what it is it's perseverance meets kind of opportunity and focus. You need to focus on something. You need to stick at it. And then when the window of opportunity opens up, you need to jump through it.
And actually, all those things are difficult to do. The last bit, particularly, because often people just prevaricate on, well, I'm not quite sure, I'm not really worried. What about this? What about that? And coming back to an earlier point is you have to have the courage of your convictions and just make the call. And maybe you're wrong. Maybe that call was wrong. Maybe the guess was wrong, and you're going to get hit in the face. Just to come back to something you said about getting your guesses wrong. Have you got any examples? A good example. What's your best example of where your most painful lesson when you got your guess wrong? Come on, cough it up.
Oh my word! So I've got so many things wrong. We could pick a load of them. Let's pick.
What's the most painful one that happened?
The most painful one was. I bought a business, and I won't say what the business was, but I'll describe the kind of time. I bought a business back in about probably 2008. I raised some money, bought a business, and the guess that I got wrong was I bought something I didn't understand. And it's a really simple thing to say, but never, ever, ever buy something where you haven't got intimate knowledge of that business. Because the danger is, and I don't have to describe even the context, it's the principle, is that if you think you understand the market because you're on the outside, you look in and go, well, that looks like a great market, it looks like a great business, I'll just buy it and I'll grow it. If you don't understand the dynamics of how that works in a very granular level, something will go badly wrong. Let me compare and contrast. The first business I bought, that consulting business, I'd worked in it. I'd worked in it for about 5 years. It was in consulting. I'd been a consultant for donkey's years. I knew the people really well. I knew their business really well. I knew their clients really well. I knew the methodology really well. I'd helped build part of the methodology. I'd worked with the team members. I knew all the people. I knew that business inside out. When I bought it, it didn't go wrong. We grew it. The second business I bought, I didn't know the industry. I didn't know the people that were selling it. I didn't know the clients. I didn't know the staff. And I bought this business. And when you hear it like that, if we were in a pub sat having a drink, you'd go, were you barking mad, Mike? Were you on something that night? Had something happened? Because it doesn't sound right. But we delude ourselves that in theory, the guess is right. Great market, great industry, great dynamics. Here's an opportunity. I'll buy this business. And it usually goes wrong.
So what was the sort of implications of that when it went wrong? What happened?
Oh, Christ. We had to shut it down in the end. I had to close that business. We bought it, spent 2 years trying to run it, 3 years trying to run it. Didn't work. I had to shut it down. It was horrible.
How much did you buy it for? If you can share.
Can't share. No, it was under NDA.
Was it a kind of, I imagine it's an amount of...
It was enough money, another lesson. It was enough money to hurt, but not enough to kill us.
Mm.
And that's important. If you do buy something, for God's sake, make sure that you've actually looked at it and gone, if this goes pear-shaped and I shut it down, is that amount of money going to kill me as a business?
Yeah, it's interesting because oftentimes your one's self-belief, compassion, stroke, kind of the energy or adrenaline that's kicking around the deal or whatever, you kind of convince yourself it's a sure thing or it's definitely going to work. And obviously, if you think about it as a guess rather than a quote investment or quote a campaign or whatever, then you might sort of temper your enthusiasm somewhat because it's likely, because most, just going back to Richard Feynman or Bezos, most experiments fail.
Correct.
It's a function of just the process.
It's
not a function of you or the business or the market. It's just the way it is. So Bezos says it's the volume, because you do 1,000, you get one that works. You do 10,000, you get 10, right?
No, and Dan, that's a great explanation. I hadn't heard that before from Bezos, but that makes now perfect sense because it is.
Yeah. So I just want to ask you, how did it feel though? I want to just get an opinion on this, that when it all went wrong, you spent 2 or 3 years, which is a lot of time after life. How are you feeling? What was the lesson you were learning in that? What was the emotional state you were in at that point?
Oh, it was awful. And it was awful, not for me. I wasn't feeling awful about myself. I was feeling awful about, that business had staff in it. That business had clients. I felt awful that we'd let people down. We hadn't delivered against what they wanted, and people lost their jobs. And it's like that felt awful. That was dreadful. And there's no getting away from that, and it's something as a lesson in life is that you should never forget. When you buy these businesses, it's not just an asset. It's not just a thing with numbers coming out at the end and costs going on the inputs. It's got people in it, and it's people's livelihoods. And I think as entrepreneurs, again, it's easy to overlook that, is that not everyone's an entrepreneur. Some people just want rightly to do a great job, get paid, because they've got other things in their life that are far more important. Well, if we take away that opportunity to earn money, they've got to find it somewhere else. And that's awful. So I think you've got to think about the human impact of what we do as entrepreneurs. It's not to be taken lightly at all.
That's really a good, again, the human impact. That's really important. And again, it's something that I very much believe is important in business as you conduct yourself.
Yeah.
So we're coming up towards the end of our time. We've got the last sort of 5 or 6 minutes, and I've got a whole bazillion bunch of things I could talk to you about. It's actually the article I referenced very, very much at the start in our introduction. I'm going to put in the show notes because it's a piece around emotional detachment in negotiation, which I think is really practical. And I was going to hopefully speak to you about that, but I don't think we've got time because I want to ask you one question just to finish off, which is I like to ask people. So I will put this link in the show notes. So please check it out on the drum. But before we go, I like to ask people. There's so much advice out there for entrepreneurs, and we've been dishing lots of advice through the course of this conversation. But what advice should entrepreneurs ignore?
Good question. And I haven't prepared an answer to this, so this will be interesting. This is just an off-the-cuff, thought. The advice they should ignore is from people who aren't entrepreneurs. So if you've not been through the journey, and academic institutions can suffer from this. If you've not been on the journey, it's really hard to tell someone else about what the lessons learned are and the critical success factors and all that kind of stuff, because they've not been experimenting. And unless you've experimented with your own money, the best thing you can do as an entrepreneur is start something with $5,000, give it a crack. Make a guess, give it a crack, try it out. Don't spend too much money, see what happens. And you'll learn loads of stuff. And so the advice to ignore is from people that are theoreticians that haven't been there and done it. Because they're just drawing on other people's knowledge from books, aggregating it and writing about it. There's nothing wrong with it, but you just got to take it with a pinch of salt. The other advice to ignore is if you start a new venture and you've got 20 friends, of those 20 friends, 19 will probably say, you're either barking mad, I don't know what you're talking about. Can we just go to the pub? And I've got to get up tomorrow morning and do my job. Why can't you just do the same? One might say, sounds interesting, bit crackers, but sounds interesting. You have to ignore the 19 if you believe it's the right thing to do. And that's really hard because you're about to basically say to mates you've been with for 20 years, thanks, but I'm going to carry on. And they're going to feel like, why are you not listening to me? In relationships, we get into this. There's a great model called the PAC model, parent, adult, child.
Okay.
Look it up online, listeners. It's a really good model for a particular reason. We get trapped. So parents talk to children often by scolding, by saying, you're not listening to me. You treat them as a lower person. Adults talk to adults about facts. In our relationships with our friends, there's often an implied parent-child relationship. You feel a bit lower than one of your mates. She's done something that's much more successful than you. So you think, well, I'll better listen to what Jane says. Or Jack's out there and he's like an alpha male doing whatever. and you psychologically feel a bit lower than them. You're about to say to those people, I'm going to do this. And they're going to think, but normally you do what I say. You take my lead. And this time you're not. Why? It will change the dynamic of your friendships. Be careful.
That's really interesting and really good advice. And actually ties back to the piece around confidence, self-belief, learning by doing. Yeah, the experiment thing. The other thing I would just add to that was a sort of little supplement is you don't know what's going to happen after you execute your guess.
No, you don't. Right?
It could be a complete failure. It could be a complete, utter raging success. But it's probably somewhere in the middle and it'll be really messy.
Yeah.
Right? That is in my experience.
Yeah.
So the data or the information you get from trying your guess or your experiment or your hypothesis, you cannot predict it. So the only way you can find it out, in the same way you found out about your capabilities through doing stuff at that engineering firm, is to do it.
Yep. There's no escaping it. You've got to get up off your bum and do it.
Yeah, it's a practice. It's a practice. It's a path. And you just got to plod on. And some days it goes uphill, some days it goes downhill. But hopefully over time, it's broadly uphill towards the top of the mountain. Kind of.
It is. Broadly, it goes in the kind of positive incline. By the way, on that thing about the negotiation and detachment, just a very quick closing point.
Go for it.
Easiest thing in a negotiation, A, have a template, write it down beforehand. So prepare. That'll get you a lot further. And B, never, ever get wedded to the outcome of a deal before the deal's signed and done. The moment you become emotionally detached to the outcome, i.e. you want it, you're desperate for it, you really want this deal, you're lost in the negotiation. Because I will spot that and I'll use that to my advantage. And that's the lesson.
Interesting. Yeah, well, that's brilliant. Thank you for pulling that out. And it is really great, that. And that idea of detaching your emotions from the outcome, being a bit more centered in the negotiation. Yeah. Don't make yourself vulnerable by exposing your flank to somebody, a shark-like negotiator like Mike Lander.
Exactly.
So if you want more great tips like that, where should people go?
Best thing to do, people can contact me directly. So mike@piscari.com, or they can go to the website, piscari.com, or look at the drum. The drum's got my articles and columns on it. They can read it on there and then have a look.
Yeah, and there's loads of YouTube videos.
Yeah, I've got a YouTube channel as well. There's a Piscari YouTube channel, which has got loads of videos on it. And again, if you could go to that and like and subscribe, that would really help me.
There we go. Go to YouTube, like and subscribe on Piscari on YouTube, and learn all the very practical negotiation, commercial, sales, new business development tips that Mike has from a whole career of decades worth of doing that at an extremely high level. So Mike, just want to say thank you so much for sharing. It's always a great conversation that we have.
It is. Thanks, Dan. I really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed this. It's been great.
Yeah, really brilliant stuff. I've got some good stuff in there, and I'm going to re-listen to this and take some notes because I frankly need to buck my ideas up when it comes to sales and pipeline development. So on that bombshell, I shall see you next time. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks, mate.
If you want to receive the top 5 tidbits, the nuggets, the insights from each episode in your inbox every week, head up to honeyblueupthebusiness.com. Yes, the snappily titled honeyblueupthebusiness.com, and enter your email address. And we're going to get the best bits. We're going to collate them together and we're going to send them to you. So you don't have to write them down when listening to the podcast. Yes, nice and easy. So get up there, enter your email address, get the tips, all good. And I've got to say before I go that this podcast is generously supported by my company, The Tech Department. Thank you, guys. They are indulging me as I'm pursuing this little creative project. If you want to find a company that helps make your technology better so that gets your business better as well, head up to thetechdept.com. So on behalf of everybody here, thanks for listening. See you next time.